Trophy. Let's start with a team that, all right, maybe not a Lombardi Trophy this year, but we could be well on our way, Dalton. And that is your New York Jets. Take a look at the New York Jets to start things off here in the AFC East. Their new head coach, Aaron Glenn, who was one of the coordinators from the Detroit Lions that was obviously very coveted going into this offseason and over the last couple of offseasons, to be honest with you. 2024 record, not so great. 5-12. They were fourth in the division, last in the division there. Defense took a step back in 2024. The previous two seasons, they were one of the better defenses in the NFL, but they just didn't quite have the offense. Last year, I think the offense maybe looked a little bit better, but the defense really took a step back, and that's why you see that 5-win total there. On offense, they were 19th in the NFL, and PFF graded a 74.6, and then on the defensive side, a 64.0. That was 25th in the NFL. The projected win total, we've got them close to 6.5. So 6.3 is the projected mathematical win total that we have for the New York Jets. Dalton, your overall thoughts here. I got you fired as if asking about pumpkin spice lattes and I guess the ripoff that is cinnamon trying to impersonate the pumpkin flavor there. Now I'm getting even more fired up talking about your Jets here to start this show. How do you feel about where this team is at, and then what's the expectations for them before we get into the details?
Well, what's funny for me is, as I'm sure you could expect, I've generally been the one around the Jets, hype, and could Justin Fields have a bounce back in the defense? And this, I've generally been the one to kind of temper that down. I know that's surprising to you, Trevor, but I think this year is more about Aaron Glenn just resetting the culture and setting the tone and finding foundational players than it is necessarily about wins and losses. I think that win total projection around 6.3, I actually think that's about right. I think you look at this team, they're not completely barren of talent. You've got guys like Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams, a couple of good linebackers. I think especially on defense, their starting 11 could play with a lot of teams. I just think you have a lack of depth and some flaws on this team, and a team that's really trying to reset and learn how to win, as they have been trying to learn how to win for the last 15 years, right? They still haven't made the playoffs since 2010. Obviously, the last regime in the last 2 years with Aaron Rodgers, Nathaniel Hackett, Robert Saleh, all that stuff, it really kind of it just didn't set the right precedent intangibly for what this team is supposed to be. I think Aaron Glenn's goal this year is to reset that, find as many foundational long-term pieces as he can, and I think eventually what you have here is the guys that don't want to be there or they don't feel like are long-term pieces, they're going to get filtered out either through the season or after, and obviously they still need a franchise quarterback. Do I think it's Justin Fields? No, I think that's a very low likelihood that it is Justin Fields, considering what we've seen from him already for 4 years. He played decent football in Pittsburgh last year, but it wasn't great. I think this is a team in transition. I think it's once again, and it feels like we've said this however many times over the last decade, they're in the beginning stages of a rebuild, and I just think they didn't take advantage. They couldn't take advantage. I think 2023 was the year when Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles. That was the year if you were going to make the playoffs. That's when you were going to do it if Rodgers was healthy. Last year, the defense took a huge step back. They didn't have enough of the supporting cast. They didn't run the football well enough. So I think this team, it's really more so about the intangibles, the culture shock, and just trying to find who the long-term pieces are. We know Sauce Gardner is one. We know Garrett Wilson is one. We know Quinnen Williams is one. Who else is it going to be beyond that?
Yeah. Rodgers tearing his Achilles, and we say this all the time, injuries are the worst part of this game. And that sucked because that defense was elite that season, and they really, I think, had a good chance to make the playoffs that season. Win a Super Bowl, okay, maybe not, but certainly make the playoffs, make some noise, be a really good football team, and then the injury happens, and it totally just changed the trajectory of not just that year, but the year that followed, and now we've got a full turning of the page with a new front office, a new head coaching staff, and I agree with you completely. Now, what they are maybe okay with now at this point is how foundationally sound their offensive line is. I mean, Olu Fashanu, John Simpson, Joe Tittman, Elijah Vera Tucker. Now you're drafting Armand Membu. That feels like the strength of this team now. And if you are theoretically taking everything down to the studs and saying, all right, we're going to build this team from the ground up, you're going to look at the trenches to be able to do that. And I think that on the offensive side of the football and on the other side, okay, there's a little bit more unproven or things that we need to see from those guys, but you've got Quinnen Williams, you've got Will McDonald, you've got Jermaine Johnson. I know Jermaine Johnson's gone through his injuries, and so, again, that's a little bit of an unknown. But again, if you're taking this team down to ground zero, you'd want to build it through the trenches. You have some pretty good trench pieces, especially along the offensive line. So how do you feel about the offensive line with this team? Because it really does feel like it's going to be their biggest strength.
Yeah, I think there's two things that are going to be big factors this year. One is obviously the development of the two tackles, Olu Fashanu and Armand Membu, right? That's what everybody's going to be looking for as their last two first-round picks. And the other one to me is the health of Elijah Vera Tucker. Anytime he's on the field, he's really, really good. He just doesn't get on the field often enough. He's had a lot of injury issues throughout his career. But their front five of Fashanu, Simpson, Tippmann, Vera Tucker, and Membu, that can be the core of this team. That can be the heartbeat of this team. And I think especially in the run game and what Tanner Engstrand is going to want to do, obviously he came with Aaron Glenn from the Lions as well, they're going to want to run the football a lot. I think as long as they don't fall behind early in games, it's very realistic that the Jets are going to lead the league in rushing attempts this year. You've got Justin Fields, Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis. They even like their fourth back, the undrafted rookie Donovan Edwards. They're going to build around the run game. It's going to look like the early stages of the Lions rebuild back in 2021 when, look, they were physical, they ran the football, they drafted Penei Sewell, they built around the offensive line. I think they're going for the same blueprint here.
Now, when it comes to the passing game, I mean, you mentioned they're probably going to lead the league in rushing attempts. I do agree with you. I feel like I've been telling people that the Jets' emphasis this year is going to be running the football and stopping the run. Like, that is going to be their two emphasis points that are on the whiteboard, and they're not even writing them in erasable marker. They're writing them in a Sharpie. Like, those are the things that are going to stay on the whiteboard the entire season long. Run the football and stop the run. Not only do they want to lean into that because it's, I think, just the more fundamental part of the game, especially when you are team building, there's not a lot when it comes to throwing the ball. Like there's not a lot of like, oh, okay, it might tempt us to lean more into the passing game because we've got this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy. They have some receivers that'll be nice on the team, but it's basically just Garrett Wilson. And when you look at, okay, you think that this team could lead the NFL in rushing attempts, Garrett Wilson could lead the NFL in targets, despite us just saying that, because he feels like the only viable option on this team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you just look at the depth, and I think this is an issue at a lot of positions for the Jets. It's why they just traded for more defensive tackle depth. They don't have a lot of depth off the edge, but with their pass catchers, I think it's especially true. You have Garrett Wilson, who's an absolute star, but Josh Reynolds is there because he's familiar with the system. Alan Lazard is there just because he was there the last couple of years, right? Arian Smith, their fourth-round pick, they like, but he's a bit raw, and he's got to work on the hands. The tight end room is Mason Taylor, their second-round pick, Jeremy Ruckert, Stone Smart. You just don't have anything close to another star player aside from Garrett Wilson. There's been talks that they're going to use Breece Hall a little bit more in the receiving game and move him around the formation this year, and he might actually be their second best receiver right now unless they trade him anytime soon. So I think you have this problem at multiple positions for the Jets, but at wide receiver and tight end really put together, anything behind Garrett Wilson doesn't feel like too much of a threat right now.
So you wrote the article, not only previewing this team, but all the teams in the NFL, which everybody can go see over at PFF.com, especially if the app, you can see all that right on your phone. In these articles, you have a key statistic, for some of these players. And the key statistic that you wrote for the New York Jets is 3.08. That's the average time to throw, which is the third highest amongst qualified quarterbacks. That's Justin Fields' average time to throw. So dig into that a little bit more, sort of that number, how high it is relative to the rest of the league, and then how much you think that could change with Justin Fields at this point into his NFL career.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're at or above that 3-second mark, you do take legitimately a longer time to throw the ball than everybody else, right? We often talk about the 2.5-second mark being the line between stable and unstable, and a lot of quarterbacks are between about 2.5 and 2.8. So when you're getting up in that 3-second range, and there's guys with high time to throws that are really good, right? Obviously, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts is another guy like that holds on to the football. But Fields, I think in a similar way that we've talked about Caleb Williams under Ben Johnson in Chicago, needing to speed it up and throw the ball on time because it's the same system. You have that with Justin Fields and Tanner Engstrand, I think, in this dimension. You want him to throw the ball on time, the play action schemes, getting the timing down on those inside routes, especially all those in cuts that are in this offense, and just generally not holding the football too long. Because even in years when Fields' turnover-worthy play rates, say, weren't so bad, the biggest problem was holding the ball too long, taking sacks, trying to make too much happen with his legs. Now, you don't want to take his legs away. He's going to be a high time to throw guy, and you want him to scramble because he's such a great athlete. But there are moments in this offense where you're just going to need him to throw the football on time. And hopefully, like we said, that thin receiving core can separate often enough for him to do it. But that's going to be a big thing I'm looking at, is how often can he throw the football on time at the top of his drop before he just decides to start improvising.
Last thoughts here. I want to talk about Sauce Gardner because we didn't touch on him yet. 2 phenomenal years in his first 2 years in his career, and then it just felt like he really struggled last year, but the whole defense struggled. And I think there is something to, I think, the human element of playing the game when you lose motivation for a coaching staff, for the direction, for all of that. And it sort of felt, and I can understand the frustration here, the defense the defense had to watch the offense be the reason that they did not make the playoffs 2 years in a row when their side of the ball was clearly good enough to do it. So then when everything kind of started struggling again, I can understand losing a little bit of motivation and focus. And it felt like that happened not just with Sauce, but sort of everybody on the Jets defense. What are your thoughts with him overall? A down year for him. And I think the cornerback position by nature is very up and down. It's very high variance. You could have some years where you look like the best corner in the world. You could have other years where you look below average, and you're still considered by many to be one of the best at your position. So it's often a tough one to keep into perspective, but I'm wondering what your perspective is on Sauce heading into this 4th year.
No, I personally, Trev, I still think he's the best cornerback in football. And I think even a slightly down year last year, his coverage grade was still in the mid-70s with like 1 or 2 bad games there. There was a game early, I believe, against Tennessee. Actually, I think Calvin Ridley got him a couple of times. But otherwise, like maybe he didn't have the 90 coverage grade, but he was still very solid last year. And I think this year I'm excited to watch him get to play in a lot more man-to-man coverage. I think Aaron Glenn, he likes to get aggressive. He likes to blitz a lot, and he likes to get in press man coverage. I think you're going to see Sauce Gardner really locked on a lot of wide receiver ones this year, which wasn't really the case under the previous regime. They didn't run a ton of man coverage really until after Robert Saleh was fired and Jeff Ulbrich just decided to start taking his chances. But in general, throughout his career, he's played a lot of off coverage, a lot of cover 3 in that defense. I think Aaron Glenn getting more aggressive and knowing the talent that he has in Sauce, especially in man-to-man coverage, I think he's going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. And I still think he's the best cornerback in football. Over a 3-year sample, highest coverage grade, highest PFF wins above replacement, most forced incompletions. I think this is somebody who's really going to benefit actually from the new mentality of Aaron Glenn and Steve Wilkes in this defense.
Ben Lindsay, who is a czar of our PFF data and our PFF Ultimate product, he has some season-long bets for every team. And through every show, we've been able to give those to you guys, some of Ben's favorite bets here. And we're doing the same here on this show. For the New York Jets, he has Breece Hall, their running back, under 850.5 rushing yards at -115. You can find that over on DraftKings. His explanation, he says, this is a prop where PFF's fantasy projections for Hall, which is 616 rushing yards this season, show significant value on the under. He's in what should be a clear backfield split with Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis to a little bit of a lesser extent. And with Allen getting positive reviews from the Jets coaching staff this season. And, I didn't bring this up at the beginning of the show because I knew we were going to talk about the running back room and Breece Hall towards the end of the segment here. But going towards what you said and how you sort of introed the New York Jets this season and what Aaron Glenn's all about, I think that he sort of set the tone when he was initially asked about Breece Hall, and he wasn't very committal on Breece Hall. And I think that was him saying that because he has sort of changed his tune a little bit on that, because it kind of felt like at the beginning he was like, yeah, Breece Hall might not be on this team, and then it was like, whoa, okay. And I think what he was trying to do at the beginning of his tenure as coach was he was basically trying to say, I don't care who you are, like you have to earn your spot on this team. And I don't think he meant to single out Breece Hall, but his message sort of came out just within that question about Breece Hall, and it was basically just a way to say, like, you have to earn your place on this team. Now, I think that he's changed his tune a little bit, and he's gotten a little bit sort of brighter in the way that he talks about Breece Hall, but I do still think that this is a pretty split backfield here, and we already mentioned, There's going to be a lot of rushing attempts to go around this season. And I don't think that just means they're all going to go to Breece Hall, even though he's had a couple of nice years with the Jets. So what do you think about this one? Below 850 and a half. It feels like a low number for Breece Hall given his talent level, but given the situation, I could understand him maybe finishing somewhere in the 700 to 800 range. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think, look, Glenn has said he wants to use a committee approach. Breece Hall, heading into the final year of his contract, has said out loud, I'm not their guy, kind of implying like, okay, this is going to be my last year in New York. Now, maybe he plays really well in a contract year, or I still think there's a very real possibility, whether it's before the season starts or before the trade deadline. I very well think Breece Hall could get traded because of the depth that they have and because of how much the Jets like Braylon Allen. And we already know with running backs, you have to have a special guy if you're going to sign him to a big second-year contract, right? Or just draft another one next year. Just draft one every year and see which one hits, right? So I think this is a situation, if you're looking for an over, I take the Jets at their word that they're going to use Breece Hall as a receiver a lot more often maybe than he was used the past couple of years, and he's got dynamic receiving ability too. But as far as the rushing total, everything is just too split. It feels like the committee approach in this backfield is going to hold back his rushing production. I would definitely take under that number.